Wow, another episode. We're going to be making a main menu today, so let's just get straight into it. We're going to initially just set this up in a really basic way, so just default UI assets, everything like that. I want to use the environment I already have to actually create a main menu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the room 1 objects and the environment, and then create a new scene and put these in my new scene. Oh, I'm also going to bring the player in, so then we have like a nice little oh, this is who you are in the main menu. Under my room 1 object parent, I'm going to remove the player spawn point, the door transforms, and the zombie spawners, because obviously we don't want gameplay in the main menu, that would just be weird. I'm going to do some edits to the environment, like with the fog plane, I'm going to make a couple of them more vertical, so that when we get a camera into the scene, you won't be able to see the sky, and it makes more sense. We'll also want to remove all of the logic from the player because we don't need any of the player controller scripts, the gun shooting stuff, we don't need any of that. So I'm going to unpack the prefab of my player and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to remove those components that we don't need. Just in case you miss anything, just press play and you'll see the list of errors and it will tell you what scripts are still on there and then you can just go in and remove them. So I've positioned my camera and got the kind of look that I want for my main menu. So now we're going to start setting up the actual main menu logic. We're going to create a new UI canvas and I'm going to call this main menu. I'm going to create a new text object for the title of the game. I'm just going to call mine The Dead Dawn, something like that. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm also going to create 3 buttons. One for start game, one for options, and one for quit. One thing I would also recommend doing on your main menu canvas, in the canvas scaler component, set your UI scale mode to scale with screen size and set that to 1920 by 1080. This just makes it so that our UI will be consistent with varying screen sizes based on this 1920 by 1080 screen space ratio. It also essentially means that if we're in a 4K resolution compared to a 1080p resolution, it will still work fine because all of these screen sizes kind of scale into each other. Let's create a new script and we'll call this main menu. Inside of main menu, I'm simply going to create 3 public void methods: start game, display options, and quit game. In quit game, I'll just do application.quit and put a little debug.log so that I can see this when I'm playing it in editor. And in start game, it will just be the same again, scene manager.load scene. Here I'm going to say load scene 1 as I'm going to make the main game the second element in the build list and have the main menu be element 0. We'll come back round to this after we've set up the buttons with the methods in this script. Attach the script to the main UI parent game object and then inside of our buttons we'll go down to the click events, we'll assign this script to them and then just assign the correct methods to the correct button. Now in order for us to load the correct scene when we press start game, we'll want to go into our build settings, add the open scene of our main menu and drag it above our main game scene, making it element 0 in our build order list. This will make it so that when we press start game, as we are loading index 1 for our scene to load, we will load into our main game scene. Now if you press play, you should have this. Also ignore the little date in the bottom. I totally didn't take a couple of days off. Okay, so let's start working on our options menu. Inside of here, we've got to kind of think about what we want to be inside of here. So I know for sure one thing I want is for a master volume slider and a resolution changer. So for this prototype, I'm only going to do these 2 things. So let's just start doing it. So I just kind of want a curved background. So if you don't have something like Photoshop, one free tool that you can find online that is really, really good, that is basically Photoshop. If you search for Photopea, in here you basically just have Photoshop but for free. So I'm just going to quickly create a curved background, set its color to what I want, and then I'm just going to export it and bring it into the project. For our texture type for the imported background, we'll need to set our texture type to Sprite, 2D and UI. This will make it so that our background's invisible and that we don't have just a hard-edged box. In the scene, create a new empty object, call it options menu, and in here we're going to put the background in, scale it to what we want. I'm going to decrease its opacity a little bit just because it looks a bit nicer. I'm going to have a title text just saying options menu. Then I'm going to have a slider for the master volume with a bit of text for the master volume, just telling the user that's what it is. And then I'm going to do the same for resolution, but it's not going to be a slider, it's going to be a drop down box. Here's me just setting up the UI a little bit here. To make it easier for UI switching, I'm going to child my original main menu UI under a parent object, which I'll just call main menu. This will help as we can just reference this object to activate and deactivate the options menu. And finally we'll add a little back button in the top left hand corner so that they can go back to the main menu. So let's start with our master volume. We'll begin by creating a new audio mixer in our project files. On your new audio mixer, click the little arrow that points to the right and then select master. In your inspector with this open, right click on the volume and select expose volume. Now open up your volume mixer, and in the top right you should see a little tab that says exposed parameters. In the drop down, right click and rename this parameter to master volume. Okay, so now in my main menu script, I'm going to create two new serialized fields, one for our slider, which I'll call volume slider, and one for our audio mixer, which I'll just call master mixer. At the bottom of my script, I'll create a new method called set volume, which will take a float of volume. This function takes our slider value, which goes from 0 to 1, and then converts it into decibels for the audio mixer. Unity's audio mixer uses decibels, not just straight 0-1 values, so that's why we're using the mathf.log10 and multiplying that by 20 so that we can convert it into an appropriate decibel range. And at the bottom of this, we're setting the float of our master volume in our master volume mixer to this decibel value. Then at the top, we'll be adding a listener to our volume slider and setting that to the set volume method. I've also just put a little debug.log so we can really see what our decibel value is when we're changing it on our slider. So just go in, set your variables up, and then put some kind of audio source in your scene so that you can really actually see this change take effect. I'm just putting a random gunshot and setting it to loop. Now with some kind of audio in for you to test out, when you press play and then you change the slider values, you should see that that volume is getting increased and decreased. As an additional note, we'll also want all of the audio sources within our main gameplay level to have their output set to this main mixer. This will allow it to be affected by the volume change which you created in the options menu. Okay, this is going on a little longer than I was really hoping for, but now let's just do our last bit, the resolution. I'm going to QuickTime this, so yours better be ready. Add using TM Pro at the top. Create a new serialized field for TMP dropdown called resolution dropdown. Create a private array of resolutions called available resolutions. New method, call it resolution handler. Set the available resolutions to the screen.resolutions. Now let's just quickly clear our resolution dropdown. We'll create a new private list called resolution options, and that'll be a new list of strings. Create a new integer for the current resolution index and we'll set that to 0. Now let's do a loop. This loop goes through all of the screen resolutions supported by the player's device. We turn it into something readable like 1920 x 1080. And add it to our drop-down list. At the same time, we check, is this resolution the same as the one that the player is currently using? If it is, we remember the index so that we can pre-select it in the drop-down. This way, when the player opens the settings, it will automatically highlight their current resolution, which makes it just feel a lot more polished. Now add those resolution options to your drop-down, the value to the current resolution index, and then refresh what is displayed in that drop-down. Finally, we're going to add a listener of set resolution and create that method below. Create the new method of public void set resolution that passes in an integer of index. Inside, create a new local variable resolution and call that selected, and we'll have that equal the available resolutions by the index. Then we'll set the resolution by the selected width and height, and we'll just keep it in full screen for now. Just assign your variable, and we're going to have to do a build of this because we won't be able to test if this is working through the editor. So I've got a build up here, and as you can see, I've got the long list of all the resolutions which I have here, and if I select one of these, you'll see that the resolution will change in the build. Okay, finally, we need navigation going to and from our options menu so that the player can obviously access this and then still play the game. We want to create two new variables of game objects main menu and options menu. We already have a display options method, so I'm also just going to create one more, which will be display main menu. Inside display options, it will just be option menu set active to true and main menu set active to false, and then just the opposite inside of display main menu, options menu set active to false and main menu set active to true. Assign your variables, press play, and you should now be able to navigate between the two menus. Alright, so that ended up being a lot longer than I was expecting. I can't believe this has actually ended up being the longest video I've made so far, so that's kind of a thing. But next time we'll probably be looking into a pause menu, and then we'll just be wrapping this up, because I kind of want this to be a thing where I give you the base, and then you can expand upon it in whatever way you want. So yeah, we'll be wrapping this series up soon, and we'll be starting on something else. So with that being said, I will speak to you later.